Princess Zarathea stood frozen in the grand throne room of the Velnari Palace. Her crystalline skin shifted from its usual pale blue to deep purple, showing her terror to everyone watching. The Emperor's words echoed in her mind like thunder. "You will marry the human," Emperor Kethaval had said. His voice carried no emotion, as if he was discussing the weather. Commander Marcus Chen of the Terran Coalition arrives in 3 days. The other nobles in the room whispered among themselves. Some looked worried. Others seemed excited by the political possibilities. But Zara could only think of the stories she had heard about humans. They called Earth a death world, a planet so dangerous that only the most violent creatures could survive there. The humans who lived there were said to be monsters. They ate the flesh of other animals. They fought without honor. They showed no mercy to their enemies. "Father, please," Zara said, her voice shaking. "Anyone but a human. The Korthani prince would be a good match. Or perhaps someone from the ethereal collective." The Emperor's 4 eyes focused on her with disappointment. "The Korthani are weak. The ethereals care only for their philosophy. We need strength, daughter." The hive swarms grow bolder each day. They attacked 3 colonies last month alone. Zara had heard about the hive attacks. Everyone in the galaxy had. The insect-like creatures consumed everything in their path. They turned peaceful worlds into empty husks. No one had been able to stop them for long. "But why humans?" she asked. "They're barely civilized. The stories say they still kill each other on their own world." General Vorth, her father's military advisor, stepped forward. His scaly green skin was marked with old battle scars. "Your Highness, the humans are the only species that has consistently defeated hive forces. Their military tactics are effective." "Effective?" Zara's skin flashed bright orange with anger. "You mean brutal? They don't take prisoners. They don't follow the rules of civilized warfare. The hive doesn't follow rules either," the Emperor said coldly. "Sometimes monsters must fight monsters." The words hit Zara like a physical blow. Her own father was calling her future husband a monster. How could he expect her to marry such a creature? "I won't do it," she said, lifting her chin with false bravery. "I am a princess of the Velnari Empire. I have rights." The Emperor's expression hardened. "You are my daughter. Your first duty is to your people. This marriage will bring us the human fleet, their protection. Without it, the hive will eventually reach our core worlds. Then find another way," Zara pleaded. "Make a treaty. Offer them money or resources." "Humans don't want our credits," General Vorth said. "They have their own resources. But they honor family bonds. Marriage creates obligations they won't break." Zara felt sick. The humans saw marriage as some kind of military contract. They probably treated their wives like property. She had heard that human males were possessive and violent toward their mates. "What do you know about this, Commander Chen?" she asked, hoping for some small comfort. General Vorth consulted his datapad. Age 32, commanded the defense of New Geneva against a hive assault. His forces saved over 2 million civilians. "How many enemies did he kill?" Zara asked, dreading the answer. "The reports don't specify exact numbers. But his ship, the Retribution, destroyed 17 hive bioships single-handedly. 17 ships. Zara tried to imagine the destruction. The violence. How many hive drones had died? Did humans even count individual lives? "He has medals," the general continued. "The Solar Cross, the Defender's Star, the Humanitarian Service Medal." "Humanitarian?" Zara was confused. "But I thought humans were—" "The medal is for civilian evacuation efforts," the general explained. "Apparently he rescued survivors from 6 different species during the Procyon massacre." This didn't match the stories Zara had heard. Humans were supposed to be selfish. They only cared about other humans. Why would this one risk his life for aliens? "Perhaps the reports are wrong," she said hopefully. "Or maybe it's propaganda." The Emperor sighed. "Daughter, I know this is difficult. But the human fleet is our best hope. They've agreed to station 3 dreadnoughts in our space. That's more firepower than our entire navy. And all it costs is your daughter's happiness," Zara said bitterly. "All it costs is a marriage that might surprise you," the Emperor replied. "Human bonding customs are different from ours, but they're not uncivilized." Zara doubted that. She had seen videos of human combat footage. The way they fought was terrifying. They used weapons that tore apart enemy ships. They never retreated even when facing impossible odds. What kind of people fought like that? "The ceremony will be in 1 month," the Emperor announced. "Use the time to prepare yourself mentally. Learn about human customs. Try to understand your future husband. Understand a killer? Zara asked. Understand a protector, the Emperor corrected. The galaxy fears humans because they're effective at violence. But they only use that violence against threats, never against innocents. Zara wanted to argue, but she saw the finality in her father's expression. The decision was made. In 1 month, she would be married to a human warrior, a creature from a death world, a being that other species whispered about in fear. That night, Zara sat in her chambers reading everything she could find about humans. Most of it was terrifying. They came from a world of predators and natural disasters. They had evolved as hunters. Their teeth could tear flesh. Their hands could crush bones, but some details confused her. Humans apparently kept small animals as companions. They created art and music. They wrote poetry about love and loss. How could killers also be artists? One report mentioned human laughter. It was described as a social bonding mechanism, not a sign of aggression. But Zara couldn't imagine what a human laugh would sound like, probably like the growl of a predator. She found records of human diplomatic meetings. In the videos, they looked smaller than she expected. Not the giant warriors from the stories. They wore simple clothes and spoke politely to other species, but their eyes were different. Alert, always watching, like predators deciding if something was a threat. 3 days passed too quickly. Zara stood at her window watching ships arrive in orbit. She could identify most of them. Velnari cruisers with their elegant curves. Korthani trade vessels shaped like flowers. Ethereal exploration ships that looked like floating crystals. Then she saw it. The human dreadnought. It was massive and angular, covered in weapons and armor. Unlike other ships that tried to look beautiful, this one was designed only for war. It looked exactly like what she expected from a species of killers. The ship's name was visible on its hull, Retribution. Her future husband's ship. Tomorrow he would arrive on her world. Tomorrow she would meet the human who would be her fate. Zara's skin shifted to dark purple again. In less than 24 hours she would stand face to face with a creature from humanity's legends. A being that other species feared to even name. She closed her eyes and whispered a prayer to the eternal light. Please, she said, let him be less terrible than the stories say. But deep in her heart she feared the stories were true. The landing bay filled with tension as the human shuttle touched down. Zara stood beside her father, trying not to show her fear. Her skin kept shifting colors despite her efforts to stay calm. Purple patches of terror mixed with orange flashes of anger. The shuttle was black and efficient looking. No decorations or artistic touches like Velnari vehicles. Just pure function. It reminded Zara of everything she had heard about humans. They cared nothing for beauty, only for war. The shuttle's door opened with a hiss. Steam poured out from the pressure difference. Through the mist, a figure appeared. Zara had expected a giant. The story said humans were massive creatures built for violence. But the man who stepped out was normal-sized. Maybe a little taller than most Velnari, but not the towering monster from her nightmares. He wore a simple uniform, dark blue with silver markings that probably showed his rank. No visible weapons, though Zara was sure he had them hidden somewhere. Humans were always armed, according to the reports. Commander Marcus Chen walked toward them with steady steps. His face was calm, almost peaceful. This confused Zara more than if he had looked angry or threatening. How could a killer look so ordinary? He stopped at the proper distance and bowed. The gesture was respectful and perfectly executed. He had studied their customs. Your Imperial Majesty, he said to the Emperor. His voice was quiet and clear. Thank you for this welcome. The Emperor nodded formally. Commander Chen, we are pleased by your arrival. Then the human turned to Zara. She fought the urge to step backward. His eyes were brown, not the cold black she had imagined. When he looked at her, she saw something unexpected. Gentleness, Your Highness, he said, bowing again. I hope this arrangement will bring happiness to both our peoples. Zara managed to nod without speaking. She noticed he didn't try to touch her or claim any sort of ownership. The story said humans were possessive of their mates, but he kept a respectful distance. From behind his back, Marcus produced a small container. It was clear and filled with something Zara had never seen before. I brought you a gift, he said, a flower from my homeworld. I thought you might like to see something from Earth. The container held a small plant with delicate white petals. It was beautiful in a simple way, nothing like the glowing crystal formations that Velnari considered art. but there was something appealing about its quiet elegance. Zara stared at the gift without taking it. This was wrong. Humans were supposed to give weapons or trophies from their kills. Why was he offering her a flower? I understand if you're nervous about touching something from Earth, Marcus said gently. Many species think our world is too dangerous. I can leave this for your botanist to examine first. He set the container on a nearby table without seeming offended by her rejection. Another surprise. Zara had expected humans to be easily angered when their gifts were refused. Commander, the Emperor said, perhaps you would like to rest after your journey. We have prepared quarters for you and your staff. That's very kind, Marcus replied. My team is small. Just 3 technical specialists and a diplomatic aide. We don't want to impose on your hospitality. Only 4 people. Zara had expected a full invasion force. Human military doctrine supposedly required overwhelming numbers for any operation. As they walked through the palace corridors, Zara watched Marcus carefully. He looked at everything with interest but didn't touch anything without permission. When a young Velnari servant accidentally dropped some papers, Marcus quietly helped collect them. The servant looked terrified, but Marcus just smiled and handed back the documents. Thank you, honored one, the servant whispered. Just Marcus is fine, the human replied in perfect Velnari. We're all just people here. The servant stared in shock. Important aliens never spoke to servants directly, and they certainly never used such casual language. At the prepared quarters, Marcus examined the rooms politely. These are beautiful, he said. Much more than we need. Thank you. General Vorth cleared his throat. Commander, we should discuss the military situation. The hive has been more active lately. Of course, Marcus agreed. But perhaps after I've had a chance to clean up. Travel in spacesuits isn't very comfortable. Another surprise. Zara had expected him to dive immediately into battle planning. Humans were supposed to think of nothing but war. The princess will join us for dinner tonight, the Emperor announced, to begin getting acquainted. Marcus looked at Zara with those surprisingly gentle eyes. Only if Her Highness is comfortable with that. I don't want to pressure anyone. He was asking for her consent? Zara had been told human males simply took what they wanted, but this one was giving her a choice. Yes, she managed to say. Dinner would be acceptable. Thank you, Marcus said with another small bow. I look forward to learning more about your culture. As they left him to settle in, Zara's mind raced with confusion. Everything about the human contradicted what she had been told. He was polite, considerate, and respectful. He spoke their language perfectly. He brought flowers instead of weapons. Father, she said when they were alone, are you sure this is the right human? He doesn't seem like the reports. The Emperor smiled for the first time in days. Perhaps the reports focus too much on their military actions. Humans are more complex than their reputation suggests. But the stories about their violence are probably true, General Vorth said. But violence in defense of others is different from violence for its own sake. That evening, Zara dressed carefully for dinner. She chose colors that showed calm and respect. Her skin stayed mostly blue with only small purple patches of remaining nervousness. Marcus arrived exactly on time. He had changed into civilian clothes. Simple but elegant. He looked less like a warrior and more like a scholar or artist. During the meal, he asked thoughtful questions about Velnari history and culture. He listened carefully to the answers. When Zara mentioned their poetry traditions, his face lit up with genuine interest. We have similar forms on Earth, he said. The structure is different, but the emotional purpose is the same. Art helps us process feelings that are too complex for ordinary words. Zara stared at him. A human warrior who understood poetry? Who spoke of emotions and art? What kind of poetry do humans write? She asked carefully. Marcus thought for a moment. All kinds. Love poems. Sad poems about loss. Happy poems about children playing. Some of our greatest warriors were also great poets. Warriors write poetry? Why not? Marcus asked with a smile. Fighting to protect something beautiful makes you appreciate beauty more, not less. The smile transformed his face completely. It wasn't the predator's grin Zara had expected. It was warm and kind. Almost innocent. I brought some books, he continued. Human poetry translated into Velnari. Would you like to read some? Only if you're interested, of course. Yes, Zara said. I would like that. Later that night, alone in her chamber, Zara read the poems Marcus had given her. They were beautiful, full of love and loss and hope. Some made her laugh. Others made her cry. One poem was about a soldier who missed his family. He wrote about dreaming of his daughter's laughter and his wife's gentle touch. It was the most unwarlike thing Zara had ever read. She looked at the small flower Marcus had given her. Her botanist had confirmed it was harmless. Just a simple earth plant. She touched one of the white petals gently. It was soft and delicate. Nothing like what she expected from a death world. But maybe that was the point. Maybe the most dangerous places also created the most beautiful things. For the first time since learning about her engagement, Zara fell asleep without nightmares. Instead, she dreamed of poetry and flowers and brown eyes that looked at her with unexpected kindness. The emergency alert woke everyone in the palace before dawn. Zara sat up in bed, her skin immediately shifting to alarmed yellow patterns. The warning sirens meant only one thing: hive attack. She rushed to the command center where her father and the military leaders were already gathered. Marcus stood beside them, fully dressed despite the early hour. His calm expression hadn't changed, but something in his posture was different. More alert. Ready. Report, the Emperor demanded. General Vorth pointed at the star map. Hive scouts hit the colony on Veltara Prime. Population 12 million. Our defense fleet is 4 hours away. My ships can be there in 2, Marcus said quietly. With your permission, Your Majesty. You only have 3 ships, the general protested. The scouts reported at least 10 hive bioships. Marcus nodded calmly. 10 scouts usually means a harvester fleet behind them. We need to evacuate the civilians before the main force arrives. Zara watched him speak with such certainty about death and destruction. This was the killer she had expected to meet. But still he talked about saving people, not destroying enemies. Very well, Commander, the Emperor said. You have command authority for this operation. Within minutes, Marcus was coordinating with his ships. Zara had never seen anyone work so efficiently. He issued orders in calm, clear sentences. No wasted words, no emotion. Pure professional focus. Something inside her demanded to see what he was really like in battle. All her life she had heard stories about human brutality. Now she would witness it firsthand. Against all protocol and common sense, Zara made a decision that would change everything. She slipped away from the command center and made her way to the palace's small courier ship. As a princess, she had access codes for all Velnari vessels. The ship's computer accepted her commands without question. 2 hours later, she arrived at the edge of the Veltara system. Her ship's sensors showed the battle already underway. The human dreadnoughts were engaged with hive forces near the planet. But what she saw confused her completely. The human ships weren't fighting like berserkers. They moved with precise coordination, like dancers performing a complex routine. Every shot was calculated. Every maneuver had purpose. More strangely, they weren't focusing on destroying enemies. The primary target seemed to be the hive ships closest to the planet's evacuation routes. Zara switched her scanners to monitor communications. She expected to hear human battle cries or demands for surrender. Instead, she heard Marcus's calm voice directing rescue operations. Transport 7. You have civilian ships in your flight path. Adjust course 15 degrees starboard. Retribution to Velnari ground control. We're seeing panic in Sector 12. Can you organize a more orderly evacuation? All ships, priority is civilian protection. Do not engage unless the enemy threatens evacuation routes. This wasn't the savage violence of her nightmares. This was methodical, professional, almost gentle in its precision. Then she saw something that made her question everything she thought she knew about humans. A damaged Velnari transport was drifting helplessly, its engines destroyed by hive fire. 3 hive fighters moved in for the kill. The transport held over 1,000 civilians. The human ship nearest to it was the Retribution, Marcus's own command vessel. It was already damaged from the battle, its shields flickering weakly. Instead of retreating or calling for support, the Retribution moved directly between the transport and the hive fighters. It took the enemy fire meant for the civilians. Zara watched in horror as weapons that could destroy mountains struck the human ship. The Retribution's armor cracked. Atmosphere bled from multiple hull breaches. But it didn't move away from the transport. All power to rear shields. Marcus's voice came over the comm, still calm despite his ship being torn apart. Keep those civilians covered. The Retribution fired back with deadly accuracy. All 3 hive fighters died in seconds. But the human ship was badly hurt. It began drifting toward the planet's gravity well. "Retribution, this is Admiral Morrison on the Defiance," another human voice called. "You need immediate rescue. Your ship is compromised." "Negative," Marcus replied. "Continue the evacuation." "We can manage," Zara realized he was lying. The Retribution was dying. Its crew was in immediate danger. But Marcus was more concerned about the civilian evacuation than his own survival. This was the opposite of everything she had been told about human selfishness. The battle continued for 3 more hours. Zara watched the humans fight with skill she couldn't have imagined. But more importantly, she watched them sacrifice. A human destroyer took a direct hit while shielding a hospital ship. Its captain died at his post, but the civilians escaped safely. A human fighter pilot rammed his damaged craft into a hive harvester that was threatening a school evacuation. He could have ejected to safety, but the collision was the only way to stop the enemy. Every human seemed willing to die rather than let civilians come to harm. When the main hive fleet finally arrived, the humans didn't run. They formed a defensive line and fought with desperate courage to buy more time for evacuations. They were outnumbered 10-1, but they never retreated. Only when the last civilian transport cleared the danger zone did Marcus give the order to withdraw. By then, 2 of his 3 ships were barely functional. Hundreds of his people were dead or wounded. But 12 million Velnari civilians were alive because of their sacrifice. The journey back to the homeworld took 6 hours. Zara spent every minute thinking about what she had witnessed. These weren't the monsters from the stories. These were heroes. When she arrived at the palace, Marcus was already there. His uniform was torn and stained with blood. His left arm was in a medical brace, but he was standing at attention, giving his report to the Emperor. "Casualty figures, Commander," the Emperor asked. 43 human fatalities, Your Majesty. 112 wounded. The Retribution will need 3 months in dock for repairs. And Velnari casualties? Approximately 800 civilians who couldn't reach the evacuation zones in time. It could have been much worse if your ground forces hadn't organized so efficiently. 800 deaths seemed to weigh on Marcus more than his own losses. Zara could see the pain in his eyes. He was taking personal responsibility for every life he couldn't save. "Commander," she said, unable to stay silent. I watched the battle." Everyone turned to stare at her. Leaving the palace during a crisis was incredibly dangerous and against all protocol. "Your Highness," her father began angrily. "I had to see," she continued, ignoring the rebuke. "I had to know what humans were really like in battle." Marcus looked at her with concern, not anger. "You could have been killed. Hive forces don't distinguish between military and civilian targets." "But you do," she said quietly. "You risked everything to save people you've never met. People who aren't even your own species." Marcus seemed surprised by her words. "Of course we did. That's why we're here, to protect innocent lives." "The stories say humans are merciless killers," Zara said. "We are," Marcus replied without shame, "but only toward those who threaten innocence. The Hive shows no mercy, so we show them none in return. That's what Merciless means to us. No compromise with evil." For the first time, Zara understood the difference. Humans weren't violent because they enjoyed it. They were violent because they refused to let evil triumph. Their legendary ruthlessness was actually a form of justice. "How many of your people died today?" she asked. 43, Marcus repeated, and she heard the weight of each number. Did they have families? Most of them. "I'll be writing letters to their loved ones tonight." It's the hardest part of command." Zara watched his face as he spoke. This man who could destroy entire fleets was about to spend his evening crying over letters to widows and children. The contradiction should have been impossible, but somehow it made perfect sense. Human mercilessness wasn't the absence of compassion. It was compassion so strong it would kill to protect what it loved. That night, Zara found Marcus in the palace garden, sitting beside the fountain. He was writing on old-fashioned paper with a pen. His expression was full of grief. "The letters?" she asked quietly. He nodded without looking up. "Mrs. Patricia Chen. Her husband David won't be coming home. I have to find words to explain why his death mattered. Chen, he had the same name as you?" "My cousin," Marcus said simply. He volunteered for the most dangerous position. Said family should lead by example. Zara sat down beside him, no longer afraid. "I'm sorry for your loss." Marcus finally looked at her. His eyes were wet with unshed tears. "Thank you, Your Highness. That means more than you know. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Zara asked the question that had been troubling her all day. Why do you do it? Risk so much for strangers? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft but certain. Because someone has to. The galaxy is full of predators who prey on the weak. If good people don't stand up to them, who will? We're not heroes, Princess. We're just people who refuse to look away when others suffer. Zara realized she was no longer afraid of marrying this man. She was beginning to think she might be lucky to have him. 3 days after the battle, Zara found Marcus in the palace library. He was reading historical records about the Velnari Empire, making careful notes. She had been thinking about their conversation in the garden and needed answers to questions that kept her awake at night. Commander, she said, approaching his table. May I speak with you? Marcus looked up from his reading and smiled. Of course, Your Highness. And please just call me Marcus when we're alone. We're going to be married soon. The reminder still made her nervous, but not with the same terror as before. Marcus, then. I need to understand something about humans. I'll try to answer, he said, closing his book and giving her his full attention. Zara sat across from him, gathering her courage. The stories about your people. About human brutality and violence. Are they true? Marcus was quiet for a moment, considering his words carefully. That's a complicated question. What stories have you heard specifically? That humans are merciless in battle. That you don't take prisoners. That you destroy entire enemy fleets without hesitation. Zara watched his face for signs of anger or denial. Instead, she saw sadness. Those stories are mostly accurate, Marcus admitted. But they lack context. May I show you something? He activated a small data pad and pulled up military records. The first file showed a human fleet action against something called the Zarathi Slaver Empire. This was 8 years ago, Marcus explained. The Zarathi were capturing civilians from refugee camps and selling them in slave markets. They had taken over 40,000 people from 12 different species. The records showed a brutal battle. Human ships had surrounded a Zarathi fleet and destroyed it completely. No enemy vessels escaped. No prisoners were taken. Your forces killed everyone, Zara observed. Yes, Marcus said without shame. Every single slaver died. Do you know why we didn't accept their surrender? Zara shook her head. Because we found their cargo holds. Thousands of children packed into spaces meant for supplies. Many were already dead from starvation and disease. The survivors begged us not to let their captors live to do it again. Marcus switched to another file. This one showed the aftermath of the battle. Human medical ships treating alien refugees. Human engineers building temporary shelters. Human diplomats arranging safe passage home for the survivors. We spent 6 months and 50 million credits helping those people recover, Marcus continued. But the galaxy only remembers the violence, not the rescue that came after. Zara studied the images of human soldiers gently carrying injured children to safety. It was hard to reconcile these scenes with the reputation for merciless warfare. Show me more, she said. Marcus pulled up dozens of similar records. Human forces destroying pirate bases that preyed on merchant ships. Human fleets blockading worlds where genocides were taking place. Human marines storming facilities where civilians were being tortured or murdered. In every case, the pattern was the same. Overwhelming violence against the oppressors, followed by careful protection and aid for the victims. We don't fight wars for territory or resources, Marcus explained. We fight to stop suffering. That's why we seem so brutal to other species. When you're dealing with slavers, pirates, or genocide, mercy to the guilty means cruelty to the innocent. But surely you take prisoners sometimes, Zara said. When it makes sense, Marcus agreed. Soldiers who were forced to fight. People who surrender before committing atrocities. Anyone who might have information that could save lives. But we don't show mercy to those who prey on the helpless. He showed her another file. The Procyon massacre that General Vorth had mentioned earlier. The images were horrifying. An entire civilian colony burned to ash by raiders who attacked for sport. This is where I earned my reputation, Marcus said quietly. My task force tracked the raiders for 3 months. When we found them, they were attacking another colony. Families were dying while we talked. What did you do? What we had to do? We destroyed their entire fleet in 47 minutes. Then we spent 2 weeks helping the survivors rebuild their lives. Zara looked at the casualty reports. Over 3,000 enemy fighters killed. 0 human losses. It was devastatingly one-sided. How is that possible? She asked. 3,000 to 0? Marcus's expression grew grim. Because we didn't go there to fight. We went there to stop a massacre. There's a difference. He explained how human tactics worked. They studied their enemies carefully. They planned every detail. They brought overwhelming force to end conflicts as quickly as possible. The goal was never to prove their bravery or honor. The goal was to stop the killing as fast as they could. Other species see this as cowardly, Marcus said. They think we should give enemies a fair chance to fight back. But every minute a battle lasts, more innocents die. We can't afford to fight with honor when lives are at stake. That's why the galaxy fears you, Zara realized. You're too efficient. We're feared because we're effective, Marcus corrected. But also because we can't be bought, threatened, or reasoned with when innocents are in danger. Other species compromise. They make deals with evil if it's politically convenient. Humans don't. He showed her records of human diplomatic missions. Time and again, human ambassadors had refused profitable trade agreements with species that used slave labor. They had walked away from military alliances with governments that oppressed their own people. They had even gone to war against former allies who broke treaties meant to protect civilians. This inflexibility makes us dangerous to those who profit from suffering, Marcus explained. We're the species that says no to comfortable lies. That makes us enemies of anyone whose power depends on others' pain. Zara was beginning to understand. Human mercilessness wasn't random violence. It was a refusal to compromise with evil. Their reputation for brutality came from their consistency in protecting the innocent. What about your own people? She asked. Do humans ever fight each other? Marcus nodded sadly. More often than we'd like. We're not perfect. We have disagreements. Sometimes they turn violent. But even our civil conflicts are usually about protecting people, different groups with different ideas about what's best for humanity. The records show you still have crime on Earth, Zara pointed out. Yes, we do. But crime is different from organized evil. A thief who steals food to feed his children gets different treatment than a warlord who enslaves villages for profit. Marcus pulled up statistics about human justice systems. Crime rates were lower than most species, but not zero. However, crimes against children or the helpless carried severe penalties. Human society was built around protecting the vulnerable. Your entire culture is based on defending others, Zara observed. It has to be, Marcus replied. Earth is a dangerous world. Early humans learned to work together or die alone. We survived by taking care of each other. That instinct never left us. But you've moved beyond survival now. You have safe worlds and advanced technology. Why continue risking yourselves for aliens? Marcus looked at her with surprise. Because they're people just like us. Species doesn't matter when someone is suffering. A Velnari child crying for her parents is the same as a human child in our eyes. The simple sincerity in his voice moved something deep inside Zara. She had never heard anyone express such universal compassion before. Is that why you agreed to marry me? She asked. To protect my people? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was gentle. Partly, yes. The alliance will help keep the hive away from Velnari space. But also, he paused, seeming embarrassed. Also what? I've read about you, Princess. Your charitable work, your efforts to help refugees, your opposition to some of your father's harsher policies. You're someone who cares about others. I think we might understand each other. Zara felt warmth spreading through her chest. He had chosen to learn about her as a person, not just as a political symbol. I was terrified of you, she admitted. The stories made humans sound like monsters. We can be monsters, Marcus said honestly, when we need to be, but only to protect what we love. The real monsters are those who hurt innocents for pleasure or profit. And you fight those monsters? Until they're all gone, Marcus promised. However long it takes, however much it costs. Zara looked at this quiet man who spoke of violence and death with such calm certainty. She was beginning to understand that his gentleness and his ruthlessness came from the same source. An absolute commitment to protecting others. Marcus, she said softly, I think I'm starting to understand why the galaxy needs humans. He smiled at her with genuine warmth. And I'm starting to think this marriage might be more than just politics. For the first time since learning of her engagement, Zara smiled back. She was no longer afraid of becoming a human's wife. She was beginning to think she might be honored to stand beside such a protector. The wedding preparations had continued for 2 weeks when the sensors detected them. Long-range scouts reported massive energy signatures moving toward Velnari space. The readings were unmistakable, a hive harvester fleet. Not just raiders this time, but a full invasion force. Zara stood in the war room beside Marcus, watching the tactical displays with growing horror. The fleet approaching their homeworld was larger than anything the hive had ever assembled before. Hundreds of bioships, including several massive hive queens that could strip a planet bare in days. Estimated arrival time? Emperor Kethful asked grimly. 18 hours, Your Majesty, General Vorth replied. They're moving faster than our calculations predicted. The Emperor looked at the force estimates again. Even with the human ships, they were outnumbered 20-1. The Velnari fleet was brave but inexperienced against hive tactics. This would be a massacre. We should evacuate the government, one advisor suggested. Fall back to the outer colonies and regroup. And abandon 40 billion civilians? Marcus asked quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. His calm expression hadn't changed, but something in his voice was different. Harder. Commander, the Emperor said carefully. Your analysis? Marcus studied the tactical display for several minutes before speaking. The hive is committing everything to this attack. If we can break their main fleet here, it will be months before they can mount another serious offensive. If we can break them, General Vorth emphasized. The odds are impossible. The odds are challenging, Marcus corrected, but not impossible. My ships have been analyzing hive tactics for years. We know their weaknesses. Zara watched her future husband plan for what looked like certain death. His voice remained steady, but she could see the weight of responsibility in his eyes. 40 billion lives depended on the next few hours. What do you need from us? The Emperor asked. Complete tactical command of all allied forces, Marcus said immediately. Human, Velnari, and any other ships in the system. No interference, no second-guessing. This only works if everyone follows orders without question. The Emperor hesitated. Giving an alien complete control of their military went against every tradition of Velnari leadership. Father, Zara said quietly. He saved 12 million people at Veltara with 3 ships. Trust him. After a long moment, the Emperor nodded. You have command, Marcus Chen. May the eternal light guide your decisions. The next hours passed in a blur of activity. Marcus coordinated with his captains, repositioning ships throughout the system. He sent civilian transports to sheltered positions behind the larger planets. He organized supply lines and medical facilities for the coming battle, but Zara noticed something that confused her. Instead of preparing for a heroic last stand, Marcus seemed to be planning for retreat. You're positioning our ships to run away, she observed when they had a private moment. Marcus looked at her with sad eyes. Princess, I need to tell you something. This battle, I can stop the hive fleet, but not all my ships will survive. Maybe none of them. The words hit Zara like a physical blow. What do you mean? The only way to break a force this size is to destroy their command structure, Marcus explained. The hive queens coordinate everything. Kill them and the smaller ships become confused and vulnerable. But the queens are protected by the entire fleet. Zara protested. Yes, which means someone has to get through that protection. Marcus's voice was calm, but she could see the pain in his expression. The Retribution is still the fastest ship in my fleet. We'll draw their fire while the other human ships evacuate as many civilians as possible. Zara realized what he was saying. Marcus was planning to sacrifice himself and his crew to save her world. No, she said firmly. There has to be another way. Princess, Marcus said gently. Sometimes there is no other way. Sometimes good people have to die so that others can live. That's what it means to be human. But you just rebuilt your life after the last battle. Your ship, your crew. My crew understands, Marcus interrupted. Every human in the fleet volunteered for this mission. We all knew it might end this way. The selflessness of it overwhelmed Zara. These humans had traveled across the galaxy to protect people they'd never met. Now they were preparing to die for those same strangers without hesitation. I won't let you do this alone, she declared. Marcus looked alarmed. Princess, you can't be involved in the battle. You need to evacuate with the other civilians. I'm not evacuating, Zara said with more confidence than she felt. If you're going to fight for my people, then I'm going to fight beside you. You don't have military training. You'd be a liability in combat. Then don't put me in combat, Zara replied. Put me where I can help coordinate evacuations or medical aid. But don't ask me to run while you die protecting my world. Marcus stared at her for a long moment. Then surprisingly, he smiled. I think I understand now why my crew respects courage so much. Very well, Princess. You can coordinate civilian evacuations from the Retribution secondary bridge, but you follow orders without question. Agreed, Zara said immediately. The Hive fleet arrived exactly on schedule, dropping out of hyperspace in a formation that blotted out the stars. The bioships were even more horrifying up close. Living vessels covered in chitinous armor and bristling with organic weapons. At the center of the formation, 5 massive hive queens pulsed with malevolent intelligence. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. Marcus's voice rang out over the fleet communications. Today we fight for 40 billion innocent lives. Remember that every second we buy them is a victory. Human ships execute Protocol 7. Velnari forces maintain defensive positions until the evacuation is complete. Zara watched from the secondary bridge as the human fleet moved into attack formation. 3 dreadnoughts, 12 cruisers, and 48 fighters against hundreds of enemy vessels. It looked like madness. Then the battle began, and Zara understood why the galaxy feared human warfare. The human ships moved like a single organism. Every maneuver was coordinated perfectly. Their weapons fire was devastatingly accurate. Within minutes, they had carved a path through the outer ring of Hive defenders. But the cost was terrible. Zara watched human ships take hit after hit, their crews dying to protect her people. A destroyer took a direct hit from a queen's main weapon. It exploded in a ball of fire that lit up the space around it. Defiance is gone, someone reported over the comm. All hands lost, Marcus's voice remained steady. Continue the attack. Their sacrifice won't be wasted. The Retribution pushed deeper into the enemy formation, taking damage from dozens of sources. The ship shook constantly from impacts. Emergency lights flickered throughout the bridge. Sir, we're at 60% structural integrity, the chief engineer reported. Keep us moving, Marcus ordered. We're almost in range of the lead queen. Zara coordinated evacuation efforts while the battle raged around them. Civilian transports were fleeing the system as fast as they could manage. Her people were escaping because humans were dying to protect them. Then disaster struck. A massive bioship positioned itself between the Retribution and the Hive Queens. The human dreadnought's weapons couldn't penetrate the creature's thick armor. We're blocked, the weapons officer reported. Can't get a clean shot at the command targets. Marcus studied the tactical display with grim determination. All power to forward weapons. Ram speed. Sir, that will destroy us, the helmsman protested. But it will also destroy them, Marcus replied calmly. And that's what matters. Zara realized he was about to ram the Retribution directly into the enemy vessel. Both ships would be destroyed, but the explosion would clear the path for the remaining human forces to reach the Hive Queens. Marcus, wait, she said desperately. There has to be another way. He turned to look at her with those gentle brown eyes she had learned to trust. Princess, this is what humans do. We stand between evil and innocence no matter the cost. The Retribution accelerated toward the enemy bioship. Around them, the crew worked calmly at their stations, preparing for death with quiet dignity. No one complained or tried to escape their fate. At the last second, something miraculous happened. The Velnari fleet, inspired by human courage, joined the attack. Ships that had been ordered to stay in defensive positions charged forward to support their allies. The combined firepower was enough to destroy the blocking bioship without ramming. The path to the Hive Queens was clear. All human ships target the command vessels, Marcus ordered. This is our chance. What followed was the most devastating display of concentrated firepower Zara had ever witnessed. Human weapons, designed for maximum efficiency, tore through the Hive Queen's defenses like paper. Within 10 minutes, all 5 command vessels were destroyed. The effect on the Hive fleet was immediate. Without their queen's coordination, the smaller ships became confused and disorganized. They began firing on each other or fleeing randomly. The invasion force collapsed into chaos. Mop up the stragglers, Marcus ordered. But priority goes to protecting the evacuation routes. Some civilians are still getting clear. The battle continued for another hour, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. The Hive fleet was broken. The few surviving bioships fled into hyperspace, carrying news of their defeat to whatever dark corners of the galaxy they came from.